Welcome, everybody. This session is presented by Nicci Lamb, who is a coach and mentor and robo-mom of one of the teams from Norwalk, Iowa. She'll be talking about the judging process and what teams can expect for that. So take it away, Nicci.
Sounds good. Well, welcome. I actually hit backwards twice there. It's a little delay on my side, so I apologize if we have a delay in how it's running through. So this is something that's near and dear to my heart because we've been in this our 5th season in robotics, and we didn't really understand the judging process very well before I volunteered to be a judge a couple years ago, and it was just really helpful. So for coaches coming in, I think this is just a really good topic to understand, even if you never actually judge. So these are the topics I wanted to cover today. A little bit about me and my background of how I got into this, the mechanics of judging, from how the judges are trained, how would we do all of that process. They are trained, believe it or not. Sometimes it feels pretty subjective, but there is definitely training for it. How each award actually has its own set of criteria. There's several of the base judge awards, and then the Inspire Award has its own separate little discussion. How the interview process works and the levels throughout the day of a competition. Explaining the share the love concept, equitable distribution of awards, and then some tips for getting your team prepared for the day. So my background, this is just, we have 2 teams in Norwalk. So it's the Norwalk RoboWarriors. We have a purple and a gold team. This is our 5th year of existence. I've been obviously a robo-mom from the beginning. My oldest is this one right here, Tyler. He's a senior this year. He was one of the 5 original kids that started our team in Norwalk. Now I have Olivia, who is also on the team. She's going to be a junior this year. And then my youngest is a 7th grader this year, and she is also on the team. So this is the year of the 3 lambs on the Norwalk robotics team. So it's pretty intense. My husband is also a coach. He was a coach before I was, and I just ended up being at every single practice, so I might as well be a coach, I guess. But I have no technical skills from a robot perspective. I do all of the soft skill stuff, helping with coordinating outreach, and I'm the go-to type A organizer. So Tom takes care of all of the technical pieces, and then I do everything else, it feels like. And then, so these are our 2 teams. This was our remote year, so everybody's masked up. Our purple team is our younger team, mostly middle schoolers. And so these are our 2 robots this year, Stuart 2 and Stuart 3, and this was Jimbo. They voted on a really odd name, but they did well. You can see we had several awards, which is part of why I'm teaching some of this judging, is we've been participants in all of the processes that win various judged awards, except design. I think that's the only one we haven't ever won. And then this is our senior team. So the judging piece that I've done, 2 years that I've actually judged as an actual judge, and this year with the virtual, I actually kind of lost count. I think it was maybe 10 or 12 events that I actually judged or was a judge advisor for one of them this season. So I've got quite a bit of judging experience, even though I haven't done it very long. I've done a lot of them. And then for our teams, we've pretty much done most of them. We've either won or placed in Inspire a couple of times, Connect several times, Innovate several times, Motivate for the first time this year. We got that one. Control Award 3 years ago. And then for the first time, we had a Dean's List finalist for Iowa with one of our students. Okay, so getting into some of the mechanics of the judging training process. So first thing is to remember, obviously, all the judges are volunteers. Not all of them are current coaches. They are everything from STEM people to absolutely no experience in some of that. So there's a wide range, but everybody's a volunteer. So it's the kind of same idea when you're a sports parent. Don't yell at the umps, the referees, all of the people that are there. They're volunteers as well. And with anything like that, judging is a subjective sport. So everybody's going to bring something different to the table, but everybody is a volunteer. But off to the side, you can see, so there is standardized training for every single type of role you can do in FTC. And if you haven't done these, it's definitely something all coaches should go get certified, even if you're not going to do that process. So you can see it's probably relatively small on your screen, but there's training. So this is my 2020 that I had done. This is actually my transcript from a judge advisor, a scorekeeper, judge, a queuer, a pit administrator, field reset, the regular privacy training that everybody has to do, volunteer coordinator, and then there's always the gracious professionalism one. You should go do all of these trainings because it's great information as a coach to understand what it is and what's expected. Even if you don't actually want to volunteer at an event and do it, it's great information, more than what the game manual has for sure. There are a couple of different things. So once you get certified, if you do want to participate, and I would absolutely encourage you to do so, easiest to do an event that your team is not participating in, mostly before conflict of interest, but you don't have to have your coach hat on as well as a judge hat. It's really good to be detached from that. But any of these other, just a plug for volunteering for FTC, it's a great opportunity. You really get to see how the mechanics work. But if you want to do that, you can apply for a role before you actually do the training, but you have to go and get these certifications done prior to your event. You do have to declare your conflicts. So if for some reason I was judging at an event that my team was part of, I could not be judging them. And for a judge role, they really try not to do that. But like my daughter was a timer for several of them. So she helped do the timing in the judges' rooms, and she declared that conflict with our two teams. So conflicts have to be declared. Everybody knows it. It's out in the open. It's not a secret. The only clarification is that they do have to be 21 years old, and they have to be 3 years from being an active member of the team. So like my senior this year, he'll need to wait till he's a senior in college before he could actually come judge if he wanted to do that. And then once you apply for the role on the team or at an event, you'll get a confirmation, you get accepted into that role. And then there's always a training specifically for the event that you're doing. Usually it's the night before, sometime the week before. At least that's how we did it with the remote ones. And then the day of the event, you log in the morning, they run through the whole spiel, how it's going to work for the day. So there's training at both pieces. So the mechanics related to the actual awards. So there's two kinds of awards out there. The MCI award, so that's machine creativity and innovation. And then there's the team attributes, the TAs, the ones that fall under MCI. So the idea behind this is the technical stuff, I guess. So this is like in our world, this is Tom's area, the stuff that associates with building the robot. What does the robot do? Did you design it? All, the things that go in there. All of them that are considered MCI, and this is all in the game manual as well. Think, design, innovate, and control. Seems relatively straightforward. Those are the things that make the robot go. Think award, it technically is an MCI award, according to the game manual. It's because it's really documenting the process that they went through, and it focuses really on telling the journey of the engineering process, and it's focuses on the build part of the robot. And we're going to go into each of these in the next couple slides here. And then the team attribute awards, these are the ones that are talking about more of the soft skills. So this is my area, is focusing on all the TA type items. So recruiting, how do you do your fundraising? How do you do outreach? Anything to bring STEM to your community, raise awareness, and then creating partnerships with the STEM community specifically. There's specific things in each of those, and those fall under the two items, connect and then motivate. So every event can have a component of both, and we'll talk a little bit about that, but it's the things that you're doing out in your community. So you can have a robot that really is not awesome. You can literally, when we went to Worlds a couple of years ago in 2019, there was a robot that had never won a match, but they win awards. So if they're out there and doing great things, your robot doesn't have to be awesome, because it does a really good job of recognizing that everybody brings something different to the table. And so as long as they're out there and doing good things in their community, you can also go far in the first competitions. So we're going to talk just a little bit about each award. Sorry, I have a lag there. Okay, so the Think Award is totally based on the notebook and or portfolio. This last year, all we got was a portfolio. So it was a little tough to judge the Think Award, but with only 15 pages. But normally you'd have your great big notebook there, and it's focusing on that design and build. That's why it's an MCI award, is because it really is focusing on the technical side of it, but in print format. I guess, how well did you express that process? You do have to have engineering content in the notebook, and describing what they're using. So show the math. This is one of our words that we had on our whiteboard all the years. Show the math for this. So if they were calculating the angle when we were doing the ring throwing, what angle does the shooter need to be at to make sure it's going less than the 16 feet it could be, but from the center line, what does the angle need to be? Figuring those out, take a picture of the math. It doesn't have to be written down. We just took a picture of what we did on the whiteboard. And then you talk about what strategy, how did you come to that, the concepts that you're developing, and document it. That's what it's about. And then they really like to see how those examples show me how you understood what you were learning from that. So don't just take a picture of the math, but explain what were you doing and what was the point of that. It should also capture the current status of the team in the robot design. So what it allows for is, hey, we're working through this and we're not quite there yet, but let me tell you what we're continuing to do. This is one of our favorite questions as a judging panel to ask them, or at least it was mine, is if you had one more week to work on your robot, what would you fix or what would you continue to develop? And this is where this really comes in, is they need to know what the next step is. I can't even think of a time when they said, hey, it's perfect. We're not going to do anything else. Like, I never heard that from a team. So there's always something else, and this is a really good way to capture that, but it should also be in the notebook. Another good tip is to flag the pages. So in the portfolio, that's 15 pages, and you want to be able to have some references to, hey, go to see more about this, go look in our engineering notebook at page whatever or section whatever, and you use it. Doesn't have to be a physical flag like attached to the side of the page, but you should at least tell them where to go to find those, so that you can cross-reference easily and find it. And then these are the coulds. So when you read through the game manual or any of the judging materials, there's a must, which is a should, or a, yeah, we should consider doing that, but it's highly recommended, is a could statement. So it's kind of a legal term of it shall have this, or it's not eligible for the award, or these are things you probably should have, just best practice type things. So make sure you're having your summary of what outreach you did. What were the outcomes? That's one important thing that this tends to be missed in some of them, and it was a lot more with the portfolio because there was so little room, is saying how many kids did you impact? We did STEM camps and we impacted 160 kids, instead of just saying we did STEM camps, yay, which is great, but trying to think that all the way through to the end. The overall team plan used to be called the business plan, so encompasses all of those pieces. What your plan is to develop, further develop skills. That's another area that's mentioned. And then about mentors, either how you use current mentors and what did you learn from them, or how do you get new mentors? How are you reaching out to find new people to help you build your skills? Design. So you have to have either hand-drawn, which there's no penalty difference between a CAD drawing or hand drawing. It has to be a decent hand drawing so you can express what it is that you're trying to say, but it has to be in there, has to be documented. So we may see something as a judging panel of, hey, that's really cool, but the notebook doesn't reference anything about what that was. That's bad. You need to have designed, show what you've designed and document it. It can reference the whole robot itself. So, hey, you have a gorgeous, beautiful bot sitting there on the field, or you can have just one little subcomponent. There were several this year with the shooting mechanism that, like, that thing was awesome, how it sucked in the rings and shot them out. That was so sleek, but they didn't really have anything awesome that it was setting in, but the component itself was really cool. So it can be just a component, can be the whole robot. You just have to document what those design principles were. Form, function, aesthetics, all of those things kind of have to marry together, and they have to be able to kind of talk about it too. So making sure your team's ready to talk about their design process and understanding, the literal taught principles in that area. That is not my area, so I'm not the expert on that piece, but being able to distinguish itself, yes, both aesthetically, but that functional design needs to be, wow, you notice what that is how I have interpreted that. And then you just have to really have thought about your design to have a well-considered design. And then it is effective and consistent with what the plan was. So you design something to meet your plan and that strategy that you laid out. So in your goals or whatever that you're describing, hey, we wanted to do this, but then you design a completely different apparatus. So those would be out of sync. So Innovate, this is one of our favorite ones. We've won this twice. This is what celebrates out of the box thinking. So the picture on the left was from prior year, but the lift apparatus on the arm. So this is Phyllis. She was our favorite robot by far. She had this really awesome arm, and we used a telephone cord to keep the cord from going and getting caught in the arm. She was really awesome because she was one of the only robots that picked up the blocks that year. And the cool thing about her arm is she could reach almost 5 feet. So if you participated in this year, you had at the end to park, you had to be in the corner, but she's an 18 by 18 solid robot, and she wouldn't fit in the corner and still let your partner get in there as well. So all we did was break the plane with the arm. So she could be all the way back on the field and just reach her arm out, and it counted as the park. So we won the award for that one based on innovation. We're the only ones that were doing that. I think a lot of people caught on to that and did it later, but we won that for Phyllis that year. And then this year we won the Innovate Award. This is our 12783 robot. We were literally, I'm pretty sure, the only robot we saw, at least for all the events I judged, that picked the rings up individually from the inside. So we used this, I don't know, they started saying it was pancake, like, you guys, it's not anything to do with the pancake, but they grabbed it from the inside and then expanded the claw to open it up, and then they stacked it in their hopper and then shot it out. So it was really outside the box thinking. So it's kind of something that's not going to be the same as everybody else's solution to the program or to the problem. So that's what you have to, and you have to document that part of how did you come up with that? What out of the box thinking were you doing, and how did you arrive at that solution? It needs to be creative and elegant, unique. That's kind of what I just outlined there. And it can be the whole robot. I've never really seen it as an entire robot award. It's almost always a sub-assembly, something individually, like looking at Phyllis, this was just a standard tile runner chassis, not super unique about the chassis itself. It was all about this component, the arm component. So it can be just that sub-assembly. It also has to work pretty reliably. It doesn't have to work 100% of the time, but it needs to be stable, robust, and work reliably. Control award. So this is the only thing that requires a separate application. So it's based on all the programming, but there is an application out there. It's part of the game manual. You just go download that. This is an example of that we did this last year. It can only be 2 pages. So if you show the diagrams, squish them down onto the pages. I don't know if that 2-page max is going to continue on, but this last year it was. You do have to have completed a portfolio and turned in a notebook, in a normal year notebook, to qualify for that. But otherwise, you do have to apply for it, and you turn that in when you register at the event. You just have to document what about it's controlling. Like I said, I'm not a programmer, so I trust those of you that do that know more about that. But the component that you're submitting for, saying, hey, how did I use sensors, or how did I use whatever algorithms and stuff that are enhancing the functionality, and then being able to show what that looks like. What is it doing? I approached the programming this way in order to do this. It does not have to work all the time, but it should work relatively reliably. And documenting things like the software techniques that you're using, algorithms. If you're not using sensors, you're not going to go very far, I think, in the control award. But if you're using sensors to do some of these things, it's, one of the very first question is, sensors used? So if the answer is none, it's going to be pretty hard to get through that. But there are some good examples out there. Most teams have examples out there, but just talking about all of those pieces of it. How did you learn the lessons on that? It's also in 2 pages. You can't put a whole lot of stuff on there. This year they had a link to a video that you could post about how did the algorithm that you're using or sensor you're using, making sure it actually worked, because we didn't have in person. Okay, connect. So again, you have to complete a notebook. This is just an example from our portfolio that we did. You have to have a team plan. So talking about your goals, what steps you're taking to reach those goals. You would also have part of the team plan is usually your finances and such as well. You have to talk about new mentors or how you're acquiring knowledge from the mentors that you have. We also make sure that we do a lot with our outside community as well. And this connect is the piece that you would pull out those of, these are kind of non-STEM people and these are STEM people. So I know it's small, but we talk about in ours here, we went and visited Copeland Manufacturing, which is one of our upcoming new mentors. Row Electronics is a mentor that we currently have. Collins Aerospace, we have a mentor that works for them. So when you go out and you're dealing with people in those STEM fields, this is where you want to highlight that. This is what the Connect Award is about, is working with STEM field people and making sure that you're talking about, you can go tour them, but if you don't then tell them about FIRST or what FTC is, that's where you kind of have to make sure you're documenting what you're doing, get the full value of your visits. And it's just really cool for the kids to go see it. So if you have the ability in a non-pandemic situation to actually get to go do tours, I highly recommend you go do that. And take your robot. We always do a demo of the robot at the end. And most people have never heard about it. So it's pretty cool. And then I already mentioned that it's engaging with the engineering community. So motivate, you also have to do the portfolio notebook. This should be pretty obvious by now. The other things is including the plan. So we do it as part of the very first page of our notebook has a team summary. We talk about what our goals were for the year, how we're dealing with that. You can include a ton of different stuff in Motivate. It can cover everything, how, identifying yourself as a team, creating either a team identity or general knowledge within your community if it's not a specific thing, but fundraising, sustainability. So like maintaining, this is an item we're covering with our team right now because I've got 6 graduating seniors. How do you make sure that we're bringing in these new young 7th graders and teaching them to continue your team in the program in Norwalk? Outreach, community service, all of those things. You also need to make sure you're talking about how each member is contributing to that. It's no fun as a team person as well to have two or 3 kids that do everything and the other 12 of them do nothing. That's not fair, and it doesn't get you very far. Your team needs to be cohesive and everybody should be contributing. And then we talk about how this is the non-STEM piece. Reaching out to STEM, we're going to throw those in the connect bucket. Motivate is really about non-STEM. You're trying to get people who wouldn't normally have been exposed to STEM, get them aware, make them excited about what STEM is. And then the outreach lessons, you need to make sure what did you learn? Don't just say, hey, we did STEM camps, great. So what did they learn from that? What was the impact to our community and how many kids did we reach and that kind of stuff? And then making sure that when you're actually talking about those, in the presentation, all of the members should talk about those. This is where it becomes super obvious when a team puts something in the notebook that, okay, that was one kid that did something kind of as a side project and the team's taking credit for that, which may be true. You just then need to talk about, well, why did only one person do it? Maybe the entire team helped plan it and they only needed one representative to do it. You just have to make sure that everybody's aware and participating in it so that it's not super clear in the judge's interview that nobody did that and nobody can answer any questions because they weren't there for it. And overall, the motivate is really that a team is truly an ambassador for FIRST. We're spreading the word everywhere we can, and in all of the interactions that we have with the community, even if it's just wearing your shirt and talking a little bit about it. You would not believe how many people in Norwalk over our 5 years stop and say, oh, is that robotics team? Because we try to get our name in the paper. They see our shirts like, oh yeah, you're part of the robotics. I read about that, so that's half the battle right there. Inspire. So this is a separate section because I would say the first 2 years, I assumed that you could just walk and say, hey, I'd like to have the Inspire Award. No, you can't actually do that. You have to earn that, and it's not an individually judged award. So you have to go through the process and be a contender for both MCI and the TA categories. So it's really representing a really well-rounded team. So these are just some pictures. This is from Worlds when we were helping the England team next to us figure out their programming, because all of a sudden it didn't work. So our programmer was working with them. So you got to show that gracious professionalism all the time, on the field, off the team, or on the field and off the field. And you need to be making sure that you're a constant positive influence is all I can sum that up to be. Gracious professionalism all the time. And being an ambassador first, but also demonstrating that and documenting it within your community. People should be able to recognize you and understand what you've done for the community. These are just kind of over the top things that we've already talked about. Your portfolio notebook is really high quality. It's well organized. You've included all the important information. And then in the interview, they're professional, engaging, and that they're having fun. I mean, that was one of the best questions is, are you guys having fun this year? Which was hard in the remote year. But if they're not, you're not talking over each other, there's just that natural rapport, and you can feel it as a judge. You can feel when a team is totally awkward, they haven't practiced, they don't know what each person is going to say, and they're talking over the top of each other. Practicing that and making it feel natural is really important there. Okay, so moving on to some of the judging process. So when you get to any competition, you're going to turn in your notebook portfolio. Make sure that if you're going to do the control award, you're turning that in. You have to have the number, your team number, if nothing else, on the front of your binder or on the front of your portfolio. You have to have the team number on it. We actually cannot accept them without it. So you have to have that on there. The initial interviews, so this is our team getting ready for interviews. You line them up in the order they're going to talk, and they do their little spiel over and over and over. And so what the interview goes is you're in front of 2 to 4 people, is an individual judging panel. You have 5 minutes as a judge. We have 5 minutes before they walk in to review the portfolio and notebook submission that they've got. So 5 minutes. So keep that in mind. It's a pretty short amount of time. The team comes in. We do 5 minutes of uninterrupted presentation, and then they're cut off at the 5 minutes. And then we have about 10 minutes, sometimes 15 minutes, depends upon how many teams there are. 10 minutes of judging questions. And then when you're done with reviewing all of the teams that you're going to see that day, the top 2 or 3 teams in each of the categories that we just talked about, the judges awards, each room nominates the top 2 to 3. You don't have to nominate somebody for every category, but the only one you don't nominate for is control. There's a separate panel that evaluates for the control award, but all the other ones, motivate, connect, design, innovate, and think, those all come from each judging room. And then so the judges come back together, all the teams go back to the pits, get ready for actually starting match play, right? So then the judges have come together and they're grouped into panels. So like I only judge TA awards. So I have no background in design or innovate or any of the mechanical stuff. So I don't judge that stuff. I'm put with a panel of new people, typically not somebody who were in the judges room originally. So I would go out and find a subgroup that's going to go look at all of the motivator connect. Sometimes there's enough judges that they would have an individual one for connect, and we're going to go talk about motivate, and there's a separate one for all the others. So they're going to go through based on who was nominated from the original judging interview. So they may have, if there's 3 interview rooms, they may have 9 teams. Each room nominated 3 teams for the Think Award or the Connect Award. So now I'm the Connect panel judge. We're going to go do pit interviews based on those 9 teams, and then to determine a ranking. So we kind of talked about that. Before we go out and do pit interviews, we will review the notebook. Specifically for what I'm judging. So I'm looking in the notebook for what did they talk to me about, motivate and connect. And that's what I'm looking for. And so then we go do those pit interviews, and that's where we do the really in-depth information gathering. Everybody but Think typically stays in the judging room because all the notebooks are sitting there, and that's all they look at, because Think is about the notebook. So everybody else goes out. What I would throw out there is consider to have a pit book. So if you have an engineering notebook that you've turned in, But if you're going to have pit interviews, a lot of your stuff's in your notebook, right? So we didn't do this the first 2 years and realize, oh yeah, geez, if we're going to start going for awards, you got a judge coming to talk to you. This was at Worlds, and we did that for Worlds in 2019. So the judge is standing there talking to you, and you can go get your notebook and actually flip to that page, because even though they had 5 minutes or half an hour to look through 9 teams worth of notebooks, they might not remember which one is yours. So it's helpful to have a pit book. It's just literally a second copy of the one you turned in. You make sure that there is a team member designated to man the pit. You're manning the pit all the time. We have a large enough team, and not every team is this big, to have somebody that they're there 100% of the time. So even when the team goes to compete, they stay there. It's totally acceptable though to say, hey, we're competing, all of our team needs to be at the field or whatever. So that's fine. Just either a coach is there or somebody is there to say, hey, they'll be back after they're done competing, and that's fine. The panels will come back to you. Keep in mind that gracious professionalism is always being evaluated. Even if you're not being judged or are interviewed specifically, one of the huge pet peeves about being a judge at a competition, a live competition, is if you hear other teams, talking smack about somebody, or just, hey, their robot is terrible or something. That's terrible. As a coach, it breaks my heart that they're not having that discussion. We had that discussion before they get off the bus at the event of, remember GP all the time. If you don't have something nice to say, don't say it. If you need a moment by yourself and you're upset about something, go find a quiet spot and have your little meltdown if you need to. Acting professional all the time. They're representing not only our school, but FTC in general. There's people and parents and grandparents. You have no idea who you're around. So it's just one of those things of, if a judge sees you, that's like a death sentence. You can be disqualified from everything by somebody making some random comment that's not even remotely part of the judging process. If they hear it, it can be taken to that level. So thank goodness I've never really been in that situation, but just be aware, we want it to be a positive experience for everybody, even if your robot's having a terrible day, because we all know robotics has terrible days. If it's not an FTC event until you break something, but it's how you handle that. So be aware of that. So after pit interviews, that panel, so I'm saying I'm looking at 9 Motivate teams, and now I'm going to rank them based on us talking to them, getting more information. Now, how do I feel like those 9 teams stack up against each other? And so we bring in those nominated teams based on that. The MCI type awards, they also use information from the match observers, so that not the judging team, although we do watch some of the matches if there's time. There's actually designated match observers. So they're looking for the technical things like, hey, there's this cool Innovate thing, but yeah, the arm never worked and it broke off or whatever. So they're giving that data to the judging panels as well to say, okay, so was it working reliably? Those kind of things. They're also watching for GP. Match observers can also report that. So if you have terrible sportsmanship, if you lose, that's not a good thing either. You should smile and nod and realize it's a robot day if you're having a bad match. So those are also things that are observed. And then after all of those interviews, then we go back into final deliberations, and then we write those lovely scripts. So this is the share the love items to make sure that we're recognizing as many teams as possible is the basis of that. Teams can only win one judged award. And that did not used to, the very first year we started that, this wasn't a thing, and it's slowly getting there. Iowa does it exclusively. So we're very consistent. Not all areas of the country, I believe, do the same thing. But they're supposed to be, and it's mostly, you have some states that are really, really small. But we have a lot of teams participating in Iowa. So we go through and do the shuffle, as we call. So you've got all of your awards, and I'm going to show you a visual of this here in this next slide. So you've got all the awards, and we've now ranked them, right? So here's my 1 through 9, if I've got 9 teams to look at. So we go through and count top 5. So you have your ranked 1 through 5. How many times is a particular team mentioned in the top 5? Which one is nominated in the top 5? And that's what we put aside to say, okay, so if this team has been nominated in all 6 categories, okay, they're over here in the Inspire category, and say they have 6 nominations. This one has 5 nominations. This one has 4 nominations. So that's the initial cut for how do you do Inspire. They have to have done well in all the categories. So when you go through that, there's then a discussion, so that when we say, here's all the 5 teams that had more than 3 nominations, how about that? You go through then and talk through each of those and say, all right, so let me make a case for, just because they had 6 nominations does not automatically say they're going to get Inspire. Maybe the one that only got 5 is actually an overall better rounded team that day, or they did a better presentation that day. Everything that judging, just FYI, you cannot take into account something you saw 2 weeks ago at a league meet or something like that. It has to have happened that day. And they're just really on today. They checked all the boxes, and we really love them. So number 2 actually maybe is the winner. So, but the thing is first place Inspire doesn't get to win any other awards. So we take them off the board. So if you're in that category, Inspire 1, 2, and 3, Inspire number 1 doesn't get to win something else. So if they're the top ranked team in all the other categories, they are now not the top ranked team. They got Inspire. So that gets taken out. But the 2nd and 3rd place Inspire are considered runners up, so they haven't won a category. So we will leave them in and go through. So they can be mentioned again. They can win another category. So only first place Inspire gets taken off. Then you do the exact same process for Think, Connect, Innovate, Control, Motivate, and Design in that order. So you go through and do first place. So here's after the Inspire Award gets taken out, then you go through and say, all right, so who's left? You shuffle them all up. And so everybody slides up. So by the end of the process, you may have had 9 teams ranked, but if 5 of them won other awards, you may be down to your bottom 4. So being ranked number 9 does not mean you're not going to get an award. It's actually that's the idea. You want to recognize all of those. So you go through and do first place for everybody. You remove them from all of the other ones because they can only do 1 award, and then you shuffle them all up, and then you go through and do 2nd and 3rd place. We used Google Jamboard, which was awesome. It's effectively electronic Post-its. This is just the visual of kind of what I'm talking about. So every room had a different color. Here's the ones that were initially nominated. The little red dots are just so you can't really see who the numbers were when we ranked all of them. And so this is the example of, for here, Motivate, I did a Motivate. So we ranked them all. So here is my top 9 teams. And then you go through and say, all right, here's who we want to take forward. And then based on those, we actually then come over and here's your final nominations based on here's who won Inspire. And then you literally just slide the Post-it notes down. So you're pulling them down, and this is who ended up. So even though on Think, if you look back at that previous slide, see Think had 9, but by the time you got through somebody winning all of them, everybody else was eliminated. So we only nominated, there was only a first place Think. There wasn't a 2nd and 3rd because they were already all winning something else. So it's kind of a visual, and I bring this up because this was an area I had no idea how this was determined before I started being a judge. And I just thought it was a good revelation to, wow, we should know this. Why doesn't everybody know that? So passive technical, I think we're running out of time here. The successful judging experience starts with read the game manual. How many times have we all heard this? Drivers meeting, everything else. Read the manual. This is members and coaches. There's just no excuse for not knowing something. You know, we've had our share of, oh God, that was such a stupid mistake. And yes, it's totally in the game manual and we missed it. So there's always something, but you should always be starting with that as number 1. Couple of things just to run through the notebook. Make sure you know what your team's strengths and document the heck out of that strength. You can win an award based on one particular thing. So if you're really awesome at Motivate, document the heck out of that, because you have no idea what to do for design and your robot is terrible. Fine, just pay attention to Motivate and just do that. Just know what that is and take pictures of everything. Preferably pictures with their team shirt on, or some way to identify that this kid is my team member versus we're teaching this other kid something. Picture, and make sure that they're representing. Using clean and simple graphics. It shouldn't be too cluttered. It needs to be easy to read, especially this portfolio piece, short bursts of info. We literally had some that was a 15-page book. It was full of words. There's 5 minutes, guys, that we can't absorb all of that. If you want to get wordy, notebook is where to do that. And then something super helpful for us is we actually organized our pages and sections. Here's my Connect award. Here's all the stuff I did for Connect. Here's Motivate. Here's all the stuff we did for Motivate. Use that referenced. It's for the judges of saying, hey, I'm supposed to evaluate Connect. How do I find that? I don't want to flip through 50 pages of notebook looking for your Connect stuff. I want to be able to find it easily. So consider that. Make sure there's always in every team, ours too, a few kids work primarily, that's all they do is engineering notebook. We get all the content from everybody else, but they make it pretty and do it all together in common formatting. But everybody needs to have read it. It's very frustrating to have team members give an answer that is completely contradictory to what's in your notebook. Interview things, just first impressions are really important. Making sure your GP within your team as well. Don't talk over each other, be respectful, use the full 5 minutes, use the full 5 minutes, and everybody talks fast. So just like I do, I talk super fast. They're gonna go faster than what you timed it out as. So have a 5.5 minute presentation, and you'll be within 5 minutes, making sure you know who's gonna cover what, hit on those core points, practice it. You can tell who has not practiced their presentation to know who's gonna say what, and make sure you've timed it. This was really important for the point person when we did it on Zoom. If you're going to end up having any electronic interviews, somebody saying, hey, that's a great question, Tyler's going to answer that, or help direct it so that you don't have kids unmuting and trying to talk over themselves. It's the same in person too. Having a director to say, hey, you should answer this one. The judge can still call on somebody directly, don't get me wrong, but everybody should participate. If they're on the screen or they're in person, there should be something else. And this is one of my favorite ones. The last question is always, okay, in the last few minutes, is there anything else you want to share with me? Don't say, nope, got it all covered. You should have something to say, even if something quirky, like, Phyllis, we had a birthday party for Phyllis. How did we name Phyllis? Whatever, just something, be ready with something. And there are sample questions out there. So you should practice those. Pits, this is just really quick. First impressions matter, have a nice clean look. You don't have to do something elaborate. The first year we showed up and we just had the table. Like, I don't even know what a pit was. This was our pit at Worlds. It's all about whatever you're comfortable with and can haul. But make sure you do have somebody in the pit that can answer questions. Don't put somebody there that's not been to anything and can't answer anything. But if they're at call, like your controller, where judges come through and say, hey, I need to answer about the coding. If you're not the right person, do not talk about that. Let them know when that coding person will be back, and don't be afraid to tell them that. They'd rather be upfront than have you blow the interview by saying something you have no idea what it is. We already talked about this, gracious professionalism. Control word, something that was told to us too, is a great idea to bring a laptop to actually show it if they have questions about that. And that's it. See, I talked really fast, but if you do have questions, this is
Well
how
done,
to get a
Nicci.
hold of us.
That was great. Actually, a question was asked at the very, 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 very beginning with the when you were introducing your teams. What was your criteria for splitting your team into two teams?
So the first year that we did it based on who was in what sports. We had very few high schoolers actually when we first started, so it became just we knew we'd have conflicts with show choir and jazz band or whatever. So we actually split them based on, here's a couple good coders, here are a couple good drivers. So that did not work well, let me just tell you. So then the next year we did based on grade. So we kept all the middle school, the younger kids together, and all of my existing ones have started. That was okay, except for when the 8th graders became 9th graders, then they needed to move up to the other team, and it left 7th and 8th graders by themselves. So we have now officially switched that. So it is a high school only, mostly because it ran into our school does not understand that middle schoolers that made it to state also should be recognized as a state team. And they just didn't. They're like, nobody comes to the state recognition because they're in middle school. Well, our middle schoolers are equivalent to our high schools. It's not varsity JV. So it was really weird. So for this, we've done that again for this year. Is 9th grade up is on our competition high school team. And now our middle school team is actually a development team. So we're trying to get those taught in. So we did it by age, just because the school was making it difficult to not be.
Okay. Then another question that I don't know if you can answer or not is FIRST going to accept electronic notebooks even for live events? And
I do not know the answer to that.
And I wrote a big tome in the chat about the difference between the engineering portfolio and the engineering notebook. So the engineering portfolio is the required element for teams to submit, whether it's
Yes.
electronically or in person.
Yes.
The notebook is the optional, but the portfolio is basically a subset of the notebook. So
Yes.
you want to do the notebook, and then you want to take the best out of the notebook and make your portfolio out of it and fit within the 15 pages.
Yes. 15-page summary of the big document. I'm not sure how you would submit this whole notebook electronically
You
ever.
can't.
It's just so huge.
Right.
And
FIRST won't accept it.
Okay.
It's the electronic engineering notebook is, or a submitted engineering notebook is not going to be done this year. However, if you have something that's inside your portfolio that references the engineering notebook, having that engineering notebook on hand basically says, and see on page 367 of this notebook, here's where we talk about that design piece or other things like that.
I would
then
also,
the judges can see that.
yeah, I would also like to add to anything electronically submitted during live events, and I put this in the chat too, because the venues vary with availability and all that stuff, reliability of internet connections. My understanding is that teams will not be able to submit electronic documentation at a live event. So please plan on bringing a printed copy of your engineering portfolio to a live event.
Okay, and Margaret asks, maybe we can have a PIT notebook on a laptop. So basically your laptop is inside your laptop in a PIT is just your notebook as an electronic version of your notebook.
I think that would be acceptable.
I agree.
Yeah.
Different judges require access to the notebook. We always preferred hard copy to be submitted for in-person events. Well, again, the portfolio is the only thing that gets submitted. The notebook is not going to be submitted this year. It's a reference that the judges would have to go search and find if they're interested in specific items inside the notebook. And correct me if I'm wrong there.
No. So, all right. Well, I think we have about a minute left before we're going to take another break in our next session. Nicci, thank you so much. Fantastic job.
Very well done, Nicci. Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So we're going to go ahead and stop this recording.
Okay.